Today we will be discussing multiplying fractions. And the first step to multiplying fractions, especially when you see a mixed number, is we are going to convert them into improper fractions because we can only deal with the singular part, so like 1/2 or 1/3 or 2/5. We can only deal with multiplying and dividing fractions that way. So we're going to start today with multiplying. And we're going to talk about the magic C, which we've talked about a little bit. So we always draw the C around our fraction. So we could use the example 2 1/3, and I would draw the C, multiply at the bottom, and add at the top, which is the same thing I have over here in this picture. So you multiply the denominator by the whole number, and then you add in the numerator and keep the same denominator. So if we look at our example with the whole number 7, it's going to be 4 times 7 plus 1 over 4. And then if you do 4 times 7, that's 28, plus 1 more would be 29 over 4. So that would be your answer. So let's talk about the ones down below. I'll do one more with you. Magic C, multiply at the bottom, add at the top. We're going to write it out. 8 times 4 plus 2 over 8. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 plus 2 is 34 over 8. And for the moment, we're not going to simplify if we can. So you can use a multiplication chart. You can use a calculator if your learning style says that you're able to use one. But I want you to try number 2, 3, and 4. Pause here and try those. So for number 2, 2 times 2 plus 1 over 2. So that's 4 plus 1, which is 5 over 2. 9 times 8 plus 3, all over 8. 72 is 9 times 8. Plus 3 would be 75 over 8. And then this one here, 5 times 5 plus 2 over 5. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 2 more is 27 over 5. So those are your three answers there. So now let's talk about, okay, how can we use that skill to help us with multiplying fractions? So how do we multiply them? Well, multiplying is probably one of the easiest skill that we're going to do with fractions. So the first step is if there is a mixed number, you need to turn them into improper fractions using that magic C. So this 4 1/5 here needs to become improper. So it's really going to be 2/3 times, and if I do this magic C stuff, I'm going to have 5 times 4 plus 1 all over 5. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 will be 21 over 5. So now I'm going to set the fractions side by side. So it's going to be 2/3 times 21 over 5. And all you're going to do is multiply straight across. So you're going to multiply here and multiply here. 2 times 21. If you want to write it out, go ahead and do that. And then you're also going to do 3 times 5. 2 times 21 is 42. 3 times 5 is 15. I'm just going to write 35. That's not right. And then you need to simplify if you can. So in this problem, it doesn't divide by 2 because they're both not even. It doesn't simplify by 5 because they don't end in 5 or 0. It doesn't end in 10. It doesn't simplify by 10 because they don't divide, or they don't end in 0. They're not doubles. But we can divide by evil 3. So we're going to divide that by 3, and then 42 divided by 3 is 14, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. And I knew it was evil 3 because you can say, okay, 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 divides 3. And 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 is divisible by 3 as well. So that's how I knew that that one simplified by 3. So let's look at a few other examples on the next page. So remember, you're just going to multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So for this one, it's 2 times 3 over 8 times 8. 2 times 3 is 6. 8 times 8 is 64. Simplify by 2 because they're both even. So you get 3 over 32 for your answer there. Looking at number 2, I have one that is a mixed number, so I have to turn it improper. Multiply at the bottom, add at the top. 7 times 2 plus 2 all over 7. That's that mixed number. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 2 more gives you 16 over 7 times 2/3. Multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. Sixteen times 2, if you don't know that, make sure you do it out to the side. 6 times 2 is 12. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 more is 32. Over 21. And this one actually doesn't simplify, so that's the answer there. Now number 3 is a tricky one. When you run into lonely whole numbers, you put them over 1 because 1 is the loneliest number. And then you multiply across the top and across the bottom. So lonely whole numbers always have to have a buddy of 1. Because if you do 3 divided by 1, which is what a fraction bar means, you still end up with 3 as the whole number. So 4 times 3 is 12, 7 times 1 is 7, and that one does not simplify either. So I want you to pause the video, and I want you to try 4, 5, and 6. And if you struggled with the example ones, make sure you check in with your teacher so that we can review before you try 4, 5, and 6. So for number 4, you just had to multiply straight across the top and across the bottom. You got 56 over 70. Make sure you simplified by 2, and you could have gotten 28 over 35. For number 5, you had to do those magic C's to turn them in proper. 2 times 3 plus 2 is 6, 7, 8 over 3 times 10 times 4 is 40 plus 1 more is 41 over 10. Now I don't know about you, but I don't know what 41 times 8 is. So that's 832. So 328 over 30. And they're both even, so I can divide that by 2. And I can get 164 over 15. And that doesn't simplify any further. Number 6 was probably the trickiest one. You had that lonely 9 that has to go over 1. But then you also have a mixed number. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 more is 5. So we have 9 over 1 times 5 over 4. 9 times 5 is 45. 1 times 4 is 4. And that one does not simplify. Now, I know there's some of you that struggle with your simplifying of fractions, and I'm going to show you a trick that if you want to use it, and if not, then you can just ignore this section of the video, but I at least want you to try it. So this is called cross simplification. So you can simplify your fractions prior to multiplying your numbers to keep them smaller. So what does that mean? So we can actually simplify on the diagonal. So if we look at the example 6 and 14, both of those are even numbers. So I know I can divide them both by 2. And then I can do the same thing with 10 and 2. They are both even numbers. So I can divide them both by 2. So if I do 6 divided by 2, I get 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And that's my new fraction. It's equivalent. Remember when we talked about equivalent fractions and ratios? And then if I do 2 divided by 2, that's 1, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. Now I have smaller numbers to work with. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 7 is 35. And that doesn't require any simplifying because I did it before I did my multiplication. Okay, letter B. If I look on the diagonal this way, 6 and 9, they both divide by 3. And then the same thing with 6 and 15. 6 and 15 both can also divide by 3. So now I can reset up the fraction. 6 divided by 3 is 2, 15 divided by 3 is 5. 6 divided by 3 is 2, 9 divided by 3 is 3. 2, then I multiply across the top, across the bottom. 2 times 2 is 4, 5 times 3 is 15. Doesn't simplify because I did it at the beginning with the little numbers. Now for C, it has a mixed number, so you have to turn it upside down. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is going to be 9 over 4 times 2 over 3. 9 and 3 can both simplify by 3. 2 and 4 can both simplify by 2. And they might not always simplify both directions, but these ones that we have done have simplified both. So this now becomes 9 divided by 3 is 3, 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1. Multiply across the top, across the bottom, I get 3 over 2. So what I would like for you to do is I want you to try number 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead, pause the video here and try. So 7 and 7 both can divide by 7. 2 and 8 can both divide by 2. So 7 divided by 7 is 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 7 divided by 7 is 1. So we end up with 1/4. The other method you can use instead of writing the division, I know that both 3 and 6 can divide by 3. So this 3 divided by 3 will turn into 1. 6 divided by 3 will be 2. 5 divided by 5 will be 1. Another 5 divided by 5 will be 1. And then just multiply that way. But I think the method with the circling is going to be better for some of you. This one you had to turn in proper. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 2 more is 20 over 6 times 2/5. And it doesn't matter which way you started first. These divide by 5. As long as you're checking both crisscrosses, divide by 2. And so you get 20 divided by 5 is 4, 6 divided by 2 is 3, times 2 divided by 2 is 1, 5 divided by 5 is 1, so you get 4/3. And you can leave your fractions improper for this lesson. As we start to get into some adding and subtracting, though, we're going to start turning them back into mixed numbers. Okay, let's look at our last section. So you can use cross simplification if you'd like. I want you to pause. I want you to try number 1, 2, 3, and 4 all by yourself. And then here are your answers for those 4. Pause here, and that way you can check your work. I did cross simplification for number 1, but you also could have simplified at the end. That's fine. And remember, for one like number 4, you need to put 5 over 1 because it's a lonely whole number. Now the last thing, we're not focusing on word problems so much with this lesson, but I do want to kind of talk about them a little bit because we are going to get to that point in our lesson where we are going to start just focusing specifically on word problems. But let's kind of dissect some of these because we know we're only talking about multiplication today. So if we look at number 5, Tom and Jimmy ran a race. Jimmy ran 2 1/2 miles and Tom ran 2 1/4 miles as far as Jimmy. How far did Tom run? So the important information in this one is it did 2 1/4 times as far as Jimmy. So you're multiplying that 2 1/4 times the length that Jimmy ran. So you're doing 2 1/2 times 2 1/4. And that's how you would set up that problem. And you already know the skills to solve it. So let's talk about number 6. Annie operates an orange juice stand. On Monday, she uses 4/5 of a bag of oranges, and on Tuesday, she used 1/3 as many oranges as Monday. How many bags of oranges did Annie use on Tuesday? So we know that she uses 4/5 of the bag of oranges on Monday, and then she used 1/3 as many oranges as she did on Monday. So because 1/3 is a portion of the of the 4/5, you're going to multiply them together to figure out what is that actual amount that is the 1/3. Because you could rewrite this as 1/3 of Monday. And remember that word of means to multiply. Anytime you could rewrite it with of something, it's always going to be multiply. So this is going to be 4/5 times 1/3. All right, let's look at the bottom one. At Adams College, 3/5 of the students are enrolled in art class. Of the students enrolled in art class, 1/2 are enrolled in painting class. What are the fraction of the students at Adams College that are enrolled in painting class? So it says 3/5 were enrolled in art, and 1/2 of those are also enrolled in painting class. So of the students enrolled in art. So there's that of word again, of the students that are already enrolled in art. So we're going to multiply 3/5 times 1/2 to figure out the amount of students. And then the last one, at Edward's restaurant, 1/4 of the dishes on the menu are vegetarian. Of the vegetarian dishes, 3/4 are pasta dishes. What fraction of the dishes on the menu are vegetarian? So 1/4 of all of the dishes are vegetarian, but of the vegetarian, of 3/4 are pasta. So we're going to take the vegetarian and multiply it times the pasta to figure out, times the pasta dishes that are vegetarian to figure out how many are vegetarian and pasta. Okay? So if you have any questions, make sure you stop by and see your teacher before you go on and you do your Socrative.